year 2000. That one that's right above your head in the white shirt, skinny pasta. That was my first headshot.
Welcome.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Hi,
We actually
Chanda.
have sound. Yay, welcome back.
We do. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining To Hell and Back, an in-depth look at addiction and recovery with Pasta Jardula and my co-host over here, Chanda Masta, the accidental activist, which I say all the time, there is no accident about why you are here, my co-host, because you are amazing. And I always like to start off the show, with just giving you praise and what everything you've been through, because you are one of those people who have been to hell and back. And I am so thankful that I'm here with you today doing this show to explain to people, to show people about what it is when it comes to addiction and recovery here in the United States of America.
Well, as much as I appreciate you appreciating me, I appreciate you more. It takes a lot for somebody who's not battling these demons to go out there and start telling these stories, because I think it's so important. And the work you are doing with me is just amazing. I'm so excited about tonight's show. I've waited a couple weeks. We've all waited a couple weeks to see what you've been working on.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I got to tell you, it's because what you guys have said, and I've known people with addiction problems and really their perspective in life. It feels like, they have gone to hell and back. And that's somewhere I've never been able to walk, on that line of close to death, of, seeing, the world for what it is and then coming back to talk about it. I mean, I think people like yourself, you have a different love of life. You have a different perspective of life. And I was keen to it. So I was keen to be able to dive in there and tell these stories and be very thankful myself, because there was a time when, I messed around with certain things that I could have gone that way. Luckily, I was just addicted to coffee and marijuana, and I'm here today to be able to tell those stories and stuff.
Marijuana is not addictive.
That I did this stuff with. Yeah, I know. Coffee, anything is addictive. If you've seen, what's the name of that show? The movie Requiem for a Dream, right? Everything is addictive. Anything could be addictive. It's how you handle things. You have to handle them with moderation. But opioids, that's one hell of an addiction out there. And one of the persons, Chanda, that I actually spent those months doing some drugs with, as far as pharmaceuticals. I have an interview with her. She's one of the two people that I interviewed when I went to North Georgia to show these stories.
I can't wait to hear her story. I know how much compassion you have for her story, so I'm excited to hear it. And it's so important that you're telling these stories and we're being honest about it. We're owning what we've done. A lot of people don't do that. You don't go out there and broadcast your past and these are my demons and these are the things I've battled. But I think it's so important for other people to hear that, everybody's struggling. I don't think anybody's family is untouched by this opiate epidemic across the country, whether they know it or not. I mean, grandma is getting pharmaceuticals pumped into her from, the doctor's office and all the way down the line, all the way down to the kids. And so, we're seeing a lot of the kids that my daughter went to school with, they've passed on, they've OD'd, in the last few years. And that's just heart-wrenching for me to see these kids that I raised and, fostered through school and high school and graduation. And now they're freaking gone. They had a kid or two and then they OD'd. And that's what's plaguing not just our, but our youth, and we're the ones who've got to call Big Pharma out. I think telling our stories is part of calling Big Pharma out. So I can't wait for this show.
It's about calling the whole system out, right? You know what I'm saying? I talked about this when I first started this, and I went to North Georgia and I saw these poor poor ass white people that were just afraid of the cops, afraid to get pulled
Yeah.
over, because they've been arrested before, thrown in jail, thrown in the system. They've been faced with incarceration
Oh,
instead
yeah.
of rehabilitation.
Yeah.
And the first time they ever touched the drug was it was given to them by their doctor. So seeing this here, I just had to go tell this story, and I'm glad I found you as a partner. Oz, are we going to start it from the beginning, not just from there, or because I see it started like on Rachel's face? I want to make sure we started from the very, very beginning.
Okay,
Very beginning.
I'll see what I can do.
Oh, okay. So
Please do
let's
that
tell
if
the
you
audience
can. Yeah.
this is a very in-depth
So
interview. So we'll be back.
yes, we're going to play the whole interview, which is about there's two people, two girls that are in drug court, which we talked about last week. We talked about the positives and the negatives and whatnot. In this particular situation,
Yes.
these ladies were very grateful that they had the opportunity to go to drug court to keep them out of regular jail, to battle back, to see if they can be part of society. And right now, they're at the tail end of it. One girl's in phase 5, which is the final phase. The other girl's in phase 4. But I'll be perfectly honest with you. I didn't hear from Mandy for a couple days. I was texting her, "Hey, we're getting ready to play your video. Hey," and today I just heard from her. But that's the
I bet
nervousness I
you're
get
stressed
inside
about it.
my heart and my anxiety, because knowing that she's been through this road again and how addictive opioids are, just to
Right.
say, "Oh my Lord, please don't let the devil dance in the blue night," whatever they call it, the blue light, the pale blue light, with Mandy. But I'm rooting on these girls, and I'm rooting for them to get through this. But hearing their story, Shanda, I'm curious to see your feedback on this situation. A lot of their stories are similar to yours and what you've experienced, and why I have such high regards for you ladies and what you're doing. You are the real warriors here, and I'm so glad that you're here with me today to show the stories.
Yeah, me too. And you brought up how you don't feel like you fit in the society, and so it's such a long road back from I'm a piece of human garbage that has no worth in society's eyes to I feel validated enough to tell my story of what happened and how I came back from it. And it's such a long road. I think that's the one thing I can never convey enough to people is just the loathing that you have when you are in the throes of an addiction like this. Even though it's okay because my doctor was giving it to me, I still felt like I didn't belong in society anymore. I was an
Yeah.
addict. I couldn't go to work, I couldn't function, I couldn't take care of myself, I couldn't take care of my family. I There was just so many things that put you down and keep you down, and on top of the addiction itself, the physical addiction. So I'm
That's something
excited.
that really drew me to this thing too. Yeah. It drew me to that
Right,
too, by the way.
right.
Just the last comment before we get started, and when we get done, I'll give you my comments on social engineering, because that's what I think it's all about. A person told
Oh,
me
yeah.
yesterday, a friend of mine, he goes, very much the opioid pandemic that hit, a lot of poor white people in this country was very similar to what they did during the Freeway Rick Ross was when they
Yes,
dropped
I
off
can't
all this
wait to cover
cocaine and
that.
crack. They also dropped off guns. So they saying it was like to,
We gotta
what I'm
talk
saying
about
is a
Gary Webb.
social
Yes,
engineering from
yes,
people up top. Yeah. So let's
yes.
get rolling. You ready,
Excited.
Shanda?
Absolutely, I'm excited.
All right, Oz,
We'll
in
be
your
back.
overalls. Let's go for it, baby. This is Cornelia. Its population is just under 4,400. It only has 2 area codes. But unfortunately, it has a lot of poor white people who are now addicted to opioids. Drug court is a common thing for a lot of its citizens. Take a look. I sat down with 2 ladies. This is Ray Ray's story.
So we're here with Rachel. Let's begin with your story about how you started, and maybe you were started and you got addicted to opioids. The first time you took it, whether it be the first time a doctor prescribed it, and also the first time on the streets when maybe you lost your right to get it from the doctor and you had to go find it for yourself.
Well, I started out back in 2012. I went through a very nasty marriage. I got beat on for 4 years. Didn't really know how to handle it. I had him arrested for assault and battery. Messed up the whole face thing, kicking me in the face and stuff like that. And after he was removed from the home, I was kind of just lost. It was just me and my son. He was 15 at the time, and I didn't really know what I was supposed to do. I had a good job. I made $23 an hour. But still, there again, I didn't really have a purpose, I felt, because nobody was there but me and him. Because him and his son were gone. And I eventually started hanging out with one of my old school friends. And we went out bar hopping pretty much every weekend. Her husband was designated driver. So we just went out and we just had fun every weekend. I'm an alcoholic, been an alcoholic since I was 12 years old. So I guess you could say I'm my daddy's daughter. I'm the only one out of 3 girls that got the addiction.
Okay.
So, but I mean, I could kind of somewhat handle that, I thought. And I started just kind of watching other people, seeing what they did. And I seen a lot of sneakiness going around with my son because he had friends coming over.
How old was he?
He was 15 at the time.
Okay.
And he got to be 16, and things just kind of got out of hand whenever I took his first cousin, my sister's son, to work. And I met this guy there. He had his own business. And he seemed interested in me. So I thought, well, okay. You know, I said, do you drink? And he said, yeah. So we started drinking together and got together. Next thing I know, he pulls out a pipe, methamphetamines. He said, you want to try this? And I'm like, well, I've never tried it. You know, I didn't want to try it, but I did anyway because I had feelings for him. Well, this went on for about a couple of months, and next thing I know, he introduces oxycodone to me. Well, he smokes pills, and he asked me if I would join him, and it wasn't no time, days, and I already felt the urge. You know, I
So
didn't.
you do more.
Yeah, I didn't want anything else. Well, I ended up pregnant. 21 years after my first one was born.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sitting here thinking, what in the world? So I didn't stop. The opioids kept coming. I've got a bad back. I took gymnastics for 7 years.
Yeah.
I taught for 3. And I've just got a really bad back.
Yeah.
I've got rheumatoid arthritis.
Okay.
And so that helped with the pain. Well, whenever my doctor found out after taking a urine test and I failed it for opiates, he no longer wanted to see me.
Your doctor.
My doctor.
Yeah.
And he sent the information up to my OBGYN.
Shit.
That caused a big stink. So I'm trying to get off the opiates at this point. I'm in severe pain. I can't walk every 3 days. So I still figured out a way of getting around the system. Drug addicts are very resourceful. They can figure things out. They know how to slip through the cracks and make things happen.
I did go to college, yes.
What did you go to college for?
I went to college for psychology, and I also went to college for computer animation at Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale. Yes.
This is Mandy. She too is in the drug court system, currently on phase 4. She had many hopes and dreams that she'd use her college degree for many things, to get a good job, to have a good life. But instead, she found herself dead smack with an opioid addiction.
How much time have you spent in jail?
I have spent a consecutive total of 6 months. That's a long time. Because that's a long story to get. Is it a long story? I don't know. Did I think I'd use my college degrees? I'd like to think that I was going to use them. I wouldn't have went otherwise, you know. But life happens, and college isn't what you think it's going to be, and life isn't what you think it's going to be, and you kind of fumble into the wrong things. And it doesn't take long of doing the wrong thing before you forget what the right thing is, you know?
Do you remember when, like, the first time you, like, took something?
I remember the first time I ever took an opiate. I was at Pompano Beach Mall. My dentist prescribed them because I had some dental work. And I felt on top of the world. I was euphoric, just the happiest, you know, and I'm pretty happy normally anyway, but that, I was just elated walking through the mall. Everything was so much prettier, and everyone was so much nicer, and the world just seemed so much crisper, and it was just, you know, I was walking on sunshine.
From your dentist.
from my dentist. Yes, and yeah, me and my friends walked through pump, and I was probably like 16, 17 years old.
Yeah.
But that's not really that introduced me to it. That didn't necessarily have me hooked right off the bat, but it planted a seed. You know,
You remember the first time you bought them recreationally?
I went to benzodiazepines like alprazolam and diazepam, and those are the Valiums and the Xanax and things like that that give you that peaceful, easy feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, no anxiety. They are chemically designed to do that, and they do a very good job of doing it. You know? Yes. So, but purchasing them recreationally, I don't know. It was usually a friend of a friend of a friend that had them. Their mom had them in the cabinet. I mean, they were in medicine cabinets and all over, you know, and we'd take them and yeah. So
Do you remember how we took Valium together?
I do. We would crush them up and snort them in excess. Yes, I do remember that.
You know, I never did anything. I was like the good innocent boy. You were like the bad.
What?
Well, my friends, the only ones I hung out with was like I had friends who sold cocaine but didn't do cocaine. Like those were my Italian friends and stuff. And so they was like, "Where you at, Pasta? Where'd you go last night? You didn't come around."
I was with the bad girl doing pharmaceuticals.
Yes. Well, I didn't tell them I just with some girl I really like, and we were hanging out. That's it. But nonetheless, I didn't tell them. I was like,
Oh, goodness.
At that time, did you consider yourself or recognize yourself as a drug addict?
No,
Okay.
no, I knew something was going on. The only addiction I've ever had was alcohol.
Yeah.
Um,
But now the Oxycontin's there. You're pregnant. Started with methamphetamines. Your doctor finds out. I'm curious, did your doctor, I understood he reached out to the
my OBGYN.
OBGYN, and did they offer any type of help though or not?
No.
Was it kind of like, oh shit, what's happened? What's your story? Let's help you out. Or was it more like
They didn't do anything to offer help for me.
nothing?
Nothing. So I tried to figure out a way of dealing with it otherwise. So I had somebody basically pee in a cup for me every time I went to the OBGYN,
Okay.
just so they would leave me alone
Leave
with
you
it.
be.
I was dealing with a lot anyway, being pregnant,
Yeah.
working full time. You know, I couldn't
What
do
kind
it.
of work was it?
I worked at Wrigley's,
What's Wrigley's?
Wrigley Gum.
Oh, okay. So you worked at the Wrigley factory at
Right.
that point. Okay.
Right, in
What'd
Florida.
you do for them? Did you work the cafeteria there?
No,
or-
I was a wrapper operator.
So now you're peeing. You have somebody peeing in a cup for you. You're going around the system. You're still taking OxyContin. You're still smoking it. I'm assuming?
Oxycodone, yeah.
Oxycodone. Sorry.
Yeah.
I always called it OxyContin. Oxycodone. Please tell me the rest of the story now up until the birth and when you had your.
Well, I managed to slip through it and get through it, and I knew that the day that I went into labor, which was a scheduled labor, because they were going to induce me because of my age, I was high risk. So I knew the date that they were going to induce me, and I thought, well, it only takes 2 days to get it out of your system, so I'm just going to have to deal. So I stopped 3 days before my inducing, and luckily, whenever they run the test on him, he was clean. Well, this went on. Someone turned me into DFACS for using pills and him or after he was already born. So I went through all that. They wanted to take my son, and I was able to finagle my way around the system a little bit and convince them that there was no problem.
Yeah.
I had cheated on drug screens for them. December the 23rd, 2016, they come into my house and they took my 2-year-old because I didn't go up to the hospital and do a hair follicle. And that was the last time I seen him till he was 3 years old.
For a whole year.
For a whole year.
You didn't
I
take the
was-
hair follicle because you knew no matter what, you're not faking that test.
Right. You can't fix a hair follicle. I don't care what you do.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
So whenever they told me what I had to do, I ended up going to jail for 3 months I didn't pay my probation, and the judge didn't want to hear it. He said, well, you're going to jail for 90 days regardless. It devastated me. Here I am. I know I'm on withdrawal in jail. My son's daddy's going to run off with somebody else. Well, whenever I got out of jail, my son's daddy ran off with somebody else, which happened to be my sister. So now I've got this on me, still trying to fight for my son. I was clean at that time. I passed a drug screen. I was doing good for the first 2 months. They set up visitation with me. I was going Tuesday and Thursday, and then the next Thursday. So it was like 2 days 1 week, 1 day the next for the whole month.
Yeah.
And then they told me in court, they said, well, we know you're passing all your screens, but this is causing severe PTSD with your son. He's having to go to therapy every day.
This is the 2-year-old.
He's having to go to therapy every day. And I said, wait a minute, maybe y'all should be thinking that y'all the one that's been traumatizing my kid by jerking him away from his mama. That child was attached to my hip.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we don't care. It's you that's causing him severe trauma. So they stopped my visitation. I was passing all my screens, doing everything I was supposed to do, going to classes, trying to get everything straightened out. And then they just flatlined my visitation. And I couldn't understand why.
Yeah. Do you ever remember a time doing that stuff where you're like, and you said to yourself, you're like, wait, this is too much. I'm going over the fucking line here.
That would be probably in Hendersonville, North Carolina.
What would be in Henderson, North Carolina?
When I felt like I compromised my character, and I recognized that I couldn't get up and go to work and wait tables without making sure I had 10, 20 pills to get through the day. That's when I felt like it was taking over my life, and I was doing things that I normally wouldn't have done to get those pills, like, the people that I would work with, I would take their money in hopes to bring back pills for them, but there was one time where I didn't bring the guy's money back, and I made up some story about the pills getting stolen, But see, that was after, I was diagnosed with degenerative disc deterioration and fibromyalgia, and the doctors put me on Lortabs. And so
Hold on a second.
Yes.
So you're taking pills, you're addicted, you're doing this shit, and they put you on more pills? Could you explain that situation? Because that's kind of like...
Well, it turns out the more opiates you take, the more in pain you're going to be. The way, because your brain doesn't make those neurochemicals anymore on their own. So I was experiencing a bunch of pain and in my sciatic nerve, and just from working, waiting tables, this physical job, this tough job. So I proceeded to go to my doctor, and I didn't explain to him that I had a problem with opiates, but I received those 2 diagnoses where they put me on, I was getting probably 120 Lortabs a month and eating probably 30 of them a day. And before you know it, that's gone. So then you have to purchase them on the streets.
And I thought, well, why even bother? Why do I even need to focus on something that's not going to happen now? They've got my kid, and they're going to take him from me permanently. That was my mentality.
Yeah. Relapse then?
Oh, beyond relapsed. This was the second overdose. The first one was, I had my son with me, and I started using the needle.
Yeah.
And I shot a oxycodone up. And 2 guys that I were with, which were real good friends of mine,
Yeah.
and I had my son in the car seat next to me, they dumped me out in my mom's yard, put him in the yard beside me, still strapped to his car seat, and they took off. They left me there for dead. And that's whenever, it wasn't long before DFACs come and took him.
I hear you.
So whenever they stopped my visitation, I was devastated.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, I've came this far and it's not going to help me. Well, I went off the deep end. My sister actually started using heroin, and she said, "Here, this will help your pain more since you're." Because I mean, just like I said, I was having a hard time walking after so many days,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to deal with the grief, the guilt. The guilt was horrible. It tremendous guilt.
Did you just want to try to block it
I
out
just
as
wanted
much?
to forget it.
Yeah.
And 2 days later, after I got on the heroin, I overdosed on it. The EMT come out to my mom's. They brought me back, and they pretty much threatened me and said that I wouldn't get my kid back. Well, you know, kick me while I'm down. Just keep kicking me.
Yeah.
You know, that's where I was at. At this point, I didn't even want to live. I didn't have anything to live for. My oldest son got sent to prison.
Is he still in prison?
No, he's been out for a year now. Totally clean.
Yeah.
Awesome kid. He works hard, does good every day. But he is the one that pretty much helped me stay on heroin before he got to prison. He's the one that whenever I needed him the most to help me be able to walk and cope, he always brought it to me.
Did he look at it as being sympathetic and not the kind of like enabling part? Is that how he kind of viewed
Yeah.
it? Did that justify him getting it for you?
Because he felt so bad because of what I had already went through,
Yeah.
and he didn't know what else to do but help me forget.
I ripped someone off, and I felt terrible about it. And I called a drug hotline, not knowing, you know, exactly. It just, are you sick of drugs? Do you want to get off drugs? Da, 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 da. Problem with opioids. And I called this woman, and she spoke with me, and she seemed to really understand what I was going through. And I made an appointment with her. And, you know, this was early 2000s. And lo and behold, it was the methadone clinic. And so, you know, I didn't really do my research. I was just ready to not have to struggle every day to feel normal. And so instead I struggled a half hour up the road every morning at, you know, 5 o'clock in the morning to make sure that I got my dose of methadone. And before too long, you know, you phase up in that program with regular screens and things like that, and you can get take-homes, and that began a 15-year-long journey with being a patient at the methadone clinic. The first encounter with law enforcement, I was 40 years old. And like I said, I had just gone down to the methadone clinic and took 135 milligrams of methadone. And I stopped at a convenience store up the road from my parents' house. And I went in, came back outside, sat in my car, and nodded out. Next thing you know, I have the police knocking on my window. I've got the fire truck, the ambulance. You know, they came in probably 6 deep in the parking lot. And I tried to convince them that I was fine, and I was honest with them and told them what I had just done, and they said, "You're going to jail." You know. And that little jail stint lasted probably 24 hours, and I was released. I made bond, And eventually I was put on probation as a first offender. And
What was the charge?
well, in the vehicle there was also Xanax and methamphetamine. And so I was charged with that and DUI drugs. Yes. So I eventually went to court and they dropped the Xanax charge and the DUI if I would plead guilty to the methamphetamines. And so I did. I was put on probation and new to the system, brand damn new to the system. No clue how this probation thing worked. I showed up like I said I was going to, like they wanted me to, and then there was just no follow-up. My probation officer just kind of forgot about me, so never called me for my appointments, never sent me appointment cards, and before you know it, I'm back on the streets up to no good once again, you know?
Yeah.
And then I ran from the law. Well, what actually happened was one day I was at my parents' house and there was a big red notice saying that I had to show up in their office within 24 hours or they were going to issue a warrant. And I was not clean. I was dirty and I knew I would, screen dirty. So I said, screw it. And that began a 3-year-long journey of a conscious effort to withdraw off of methadone, but using other substances to replace the methadone usage. My heart was in the right place. I know I didn't want to take that drug anymore, but if you don't have any skills and support behind you, and you're just used to the folks out there that you've been dealing with, what ends up happening is you just end up taking methamphetamines or any kind of anything to make you feel better because the withdrawals are excruciating.
Can you explain to me the withdrawals that you went through when you needed your fix and everything like that, how you felt and the severity of it?
Agitation is probably the biggest thing. Chest pains, upset stomach, the shakes beyond belief. I've withdrew from alcohol. And the difference between the alcohol withdrawals is it feels like your insides are getting chewed up. The difference with the heroin withdrawals and the oxycodone, any kind of opioids, I had restless leg from my ears to my toes. I couldn't stay still. My body hurt so bad. And it literally felt like I was having a heart attack numerous times. I've had friends that got through in jail that had heart attacks in jail recently.
This with the withdrawals from the opioids.
Just from the withdrawals. My ex-boyfriend, he laid in the floor in the jail for 11 days until some of the other inmates come in there and got him up and put him in the shower and cleaned his room up because the guards didn't care. You lose bodily function. You can't keep nothing down. You are so sick you can't even hold your head up.
Mm-hmm.
But even going through something like that, the addiction is so strong, you don't care. You don't want to feel like that ever again. You don't want to go through those withdrawals. You don't want to feel that kind of pain. You don't want to have those shakes where you can't hold a glass, and or you don't want to be able to not be able to hold your head up. Yeah. That's the scary thing about the opioid addiction. That's what most people want to avoid. It's not just the point that they need that fix. They're scared to death of those withdrawals.
Okay.
I was terrified because I knew what was going to happen. I would be up for 9-10 days and just miserable. My skin crawling. I couldn't stand it. I was ill. Couldn't barely even get up and go to the bathroom.
Isn't it odd now? Do you think back, like, you got started taking methadone to get kicking
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
That was like suggested to you. You said you called a hotline.
I did, and it was a methadone clinic. And I just wanted to get, like I said, if hindsight, So, yes, very odd that they would use a way more powerful synthetic opiate to get me off of an opiate. Doesn't make sense.
How was that process? Did you have to go through testing with your opioids and like see this doctor, talk to that person, and then maybe a couple weeks later they're like, all right, we decided to get you on methadone? Or was it like, first trip, how you doing? Here's your methadone.
Pretty much. You see a counselor. The first trip, you will dose. You will. They start you off, I think, at 30 milligrams or 35 milligrams. And the crazy thing is that you just let us know if you need any more, you know. So basically, for the first couple weeks, you're trying to find a dose where you level out. I mean, you eventually see a doctor. The doctor has to prescribe it, you know, and they just ask you some generic questions. But it's pretty much up to you how high you want to go. Like, I remember one time the computer system was broken down and everybody had to write their patient ID and their dose. There was a guy taking 400 milligrams of methadone, you know. But how do they let you 30? I'd have been just fine with 35 milligrams, you know. There was no need for me to go up to 135 milligrams, but they allow a person with an addictive mindset to dictate what they ingest every day to feel okay. That seems a bit odd to me.
At one point, were you still mixing the meth and the?
Oh yeah. After I realized that mixing them, the meth being an upper, the heroin being a downer, it gives you a happy medium where you don't overdose.
Yeah.
There are people that have overdosed on mixing them like that, but for me, it kept my heart beating and kept my blood pumping to where I wouldn't overdose. But boy, the moment I didn't mix the meth with it, I overdosed again.
Okay.
So, I mean, I've overdosed 3 times. I was dead twice for almost 5 minutes a time.
Jesus.
And that last time I meant to do it and it didn't work. They brought me back again. And I was so mad. I looked at them, you know, I had a cop come up to the ambulance there at my mom's and he said my name. He said, Rachel. And I wouldn't even look at him. My heart went to beating fast. I mean, I had like a adrenaline dump come over me and I just turned my head and I said, what? And he said, do you know who this is? And I said, yes, sir. He said, who am I? And I said his name and it was my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law is a cop in this county. And I just started crying. And he's like, what has happened to you? You know, He saved me from an arrest one time before. And he said, straighten it up or I'm going to take you to jail. I said, okay. And then he shows up at my mom's house in the ambulance with me, clothes ripped off of me. I was so embarrassed. And that done it to me. I had 5 pills on me, which the cops confiscated. I'd already done a shot of heroin. And I didn't care, you know. I thought, well, I'll get it the next time. I didn't want to live anymore. I was to the point, the guilt was so bad. You know, I couldn't help my oldest son. My little boy got took from me permanently. You know, it didn't matter what I did, they wouldn't work with me. You know, if I did work with them, it wasn't right. And I didn't know how to deal. I didn't know how to deal with anything anymore. And, I mean, I didn't even have a record till I was 42 years old. You know, after I had my little boy, 5 months, and I go to jail.
What it feels like to take methadone is, it's a heavy feeling. For me, it was. Everybody's different, you know, but if you're up and you're moving, you'll get some things conquered, you'll get some things accomplished. But if you sit down for a split second, you will be asleep. I can't tell you how many cars I've run into just nodding out at stoplights or stop signs.
Yeah.
How many blankets I've ruined from just falling asleep with cigarettes in my hand. You know, it's a heavy feeling. You know, there's a euphoria, but it's a heavier. It's a powerful drug.
Did the judges ever take that into consideration? The fact that, like, okay, Rachel, you've been clean up until you're 42 years old, so something happened here. You had a drastic moment of your life. Let's see if we can use more of rehabilitation rather than incarceration, or
They don't go with that here. I mean, it's rare that they go with that. They just want to throw you away. That's what they did to my son, my oldest one. They, he asked for some kind of rehabilitation, and they said, nope, 10 to 4. The end. Possession of fentanyl with intent. And he said, Mama, I've never even seen fentanyl. I said, well, son, that's what the heroin is here. It's pure fentanyl or carfentanil, one or the other. I said, it just looks like heroin. And somebody died with his case, The girl's still in jail waiting on a murder charge. But he pled out to possession with fentanyl with intent. So,
but now he's out though. At least he's got a chance.
yeah, and I mean, he's doing great. And whenever the ambulance left that day, I thought, well, I just had enough. Didn't want to live anymore. I went and bought a gram of heroin. Some good stuff. Everybody was talking about this stuff will knock you off your feet. Just be careful with it. I threw the whole gram in a spoon, and I done every bit of it. And I'm sitting there waiting. I was by myself because I knew what was going to happen. I sit there and waited and waited and waited and waited. Nothing happened. I thought, well, crap, Everybody said this stuff was good. I'll go get another one. So I went and got another gram. And I done that gram the same way. And I waited and I waited. My sister come through the door and she said, what are you doing? And I said, ending it. I just don't want to be here anymore. I've had enough fun. And she said, this stuff is bad. It will kill you. I said, Stacy, I've already done 2 grams and I ain't dead yet. She said, well, then it's not your time to go. But God's got a plan for you.
It just seems so odd that you took methadone to get rid of an opioid addiction. Now you have this other addiction of methadone. How did you pay for everything?
I was married at the time.
How did you pay for everything?
The way that I paid for my medicine, which I called it medicine, but every month was my husband worked, and I was stay-at-home mom, and so it just was allotted in our monthly bills. Yep.
Did you sleep a lot during the days?
Yeah.
You just took some methadone and methadone out.
Yeah.
How different was the methadone feeling from the opioid feeling?
It's pretty similar. It was way more powerful.
The difference between the two, say, can
The difference between methadone and just taking Lortabs or Percocets was a lot more powerful, a lot heavier of a feeling, and because your system is saturated in it. Yeah, because you're taking it every morning and you're taking so much of it. So, very heavy.
Is there any time when you were taking the methadone, like you would just say to yourself, like, this is fucking awful. Like, what am I gonna do?
Oh yeah. I got really, really sick of it, but I was addicted to it. My brain was addicted to it. My body, I thought I couldn't function without it. God forbid I miss, I would never miss a dose, but the prospect of it, if it would snow or if it was icy, that would just send me into a panic. I can't survive without it for 24 hours. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of odd, like, that both your opioid addiction and your methadone addiction were originally prescribed by a doctor.
Yes. The initial experience with opiates was from a doctor.
And whenever she said that, it kind of hit me. And I thought about it for a little bit, and I thought, well, maybe he does. But I still couldn't get rid of the addiction. I still wanted it. I still had to do it. Scared to death of the withdrawals. Well, I got in some trouble back in 2016 that I was finally going to court on. And the DA there wanted to send me to 3 years in jail after a year in in-house rehab after 9 months RSAT. I'm sitting here doing the math. I'm like, God Almighty, she's wanting me to do 5 years on a 1 gram of meth that wasn't even mine. Well, I'm with somebody new at this point, and he's like, well, what do you want to do? I said, get out of this county. I don't want to be in Habersham County anymore. I can't. I know too many people. All I got to do is make a phone call. I got what I need in 10 minutes. Well, he lived in Hartwell, so I moved to Hartwell. And I thought, well, okay, figure something out here. You know, I stayed there for 3 months. Things was going good. I didn't know nobody. Nobody knew me. I changed my phone number. You know, think life was great for 3 months. You know, of course, I still was able to find pills whenever I needed them. I just didn't have the heroin. He got into something with his grandmother, so we ended up moving back here. Big mistake. I got him on the heroin. He's looking at 30 years now, and he's still in jail. And whenever he went back to jail, I had to go back to court and find out what my charges was going to be, or, you know, what my actual sentencing was going to be. I asked for drug court. And I told the judge, I said, I don't want to go away for 5 years. I said, that's not going to help me. I said, you know, I know how strict drug court is. I know how the process works. I know people that's graduated and still doing good. I said, give me a chance. And me knowing good and well, he said, well, if you can pass the drug screen right here, right now, then I'll let you in drug court. I'm like, oh boy, I was dirtier than hell. I had done a shot before I even went in there. So I'm sitting here thinking, my mind, criminal addictive thinking, is already figuring it out. Well, I get somebody to go find me something that I could stuff that had liquid in it that looked like pee. And 2 hours later, after the probation officer in Hall County is waiting on me to pee, she's finally not looking where I could actually unscrew the cap that's on this thing and pee in a cup. Well, he sentenced me to drug court and waited on Habersham County's drug court because I had charges up here.
What year was this?
2018. Well, I get up here and go to court over possession of oxycodone, possession of Dilaudid, possession of meth. I had possession of Lortab. You know, this was 2 different cases. Well, they went ahead and they sentenced me to drug court too. And then so I had my case from Hall County sent up here. Meanwhile, I'm still figuring out how I'm going to cheat the system because I'm not going to quit doing heroin. Hell, I figured out how to use a bottle. And I cheated the system in drug court for 14 months. And I thought, well, it's not if they catch me, it's when they catch me. And they knew something was going on. They could tell. I was fidgety. I was late for class, missing classes. You know, they knew something was going on. They're not stupid. And I had to go in for a drug screen, and the drug screener was new. And, of course, she thought I was using a bottle. And she said, well, here, you didn't pee enough. Just pee just a little bit more in here. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I did, and they sent it off, even though all the strips said negative. She said, well, we're going to send it off because the temperature strip's not working. I'm like, really? You know, I figured drug court probably contacted her and told her, hey, make sure you send that urine off. Well, it came back. It came back with methamphetamines in it. It came back with oxycodone in it. It came back with heroin. It came back with fentanyl. And it came back with, hydrocodone.
Okay.
So here I am getting just slandered in court. We have drug court that day, and Judge Caldwell said, okay, this is your second one in a month, because the first one was just a basic, you know, I wouldn't even tell them. I just say, yeah, I'm going to fail it. I didn't even take the test. Meth. I wouldn't tell them it's heroin. But so they went ahead and he said, well, you're going to go to jail.
Which one do you think is worse, the methadone or the opioid?
I can't answer that. They're both they're both a miserable way to live. You live in fear.
Yeah.
Fear of withdrawal. Constant fear of withdrawal. You know, you think that you're not going to be able to exist without it. It's painful. Coming off methadone, it's no joke. And I did it cold turkey, and you know, the withdrawal symptoms from coming off of that drug, uh, it feels like you're coming out of your own skin.
Do you ever get fearful to this day that you might slip up and go
No.
back to it?
No. I thought I would be on methadone for the rest of my life. And it is an absolute miracle that I'm not. Not a lot of people come off that drug successfully. And there's no way I'll ever tamper with it again because I know its power. You know, I won't risk it. No.
Next thing I know, they signed a sentencing paper for me to go to RSAT.
What is RSAT?
RSAT is a residential substance abuse treatment program. It's very structured. It's in a prison setting. Of course, you're listed as a probationer, not an inmate,
Okay.
detainee, so to speak. So they keep the RSAT people away from any of the general population. They can't have any contact with them because you know what goes on in prisons. You can get more drugs in there than you can outside. So I spent 3 months in jail waiting to go there. And there was a girl that came in the jail, and of course she was packing. Well, they took me out of my cell and put me into her cell because they said she was coming down off methamphetamines. I said, ma'am, you don't come down off methamphetamines. If you do, you're sleeping. That's pretty much the bottom line. You don't withdraw from it. You just sleep. Well, needless to say, me and this girl stayed tore up for a solid week. Because I thought, well, I'm going to RSAT. I might as well enjoy it, you know. Wrong mentality. But I got to RSAT and I walked in there and I've never been so devastated in my life. The girls there, their whole personalities and their whole demeanor is not what I'm used to. You've got them from all over the state there. You know, we had 2 dorms. One carried 100 people, one carried 98 people. So you've got almost 200 girls that are from all spectrums of the state, some of them from out of state.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just sitting here thinking, oh, Lord, I'm in hell. You know, I didn't know what to do. I was just beside myself. I've never been through anything like that. But, you know, the program itself taught me a lot. And I had a great counselor. She worked with me for the whole 9 months and dealing with this guilt that I was carrying because I couldn't even talk about it without crying. I mean, it was just so devastating to me to know that I had lost my son and didn't do anything to prevent it. Because I raised my first one, a hard worker. You know, he had a life insurance policy. He didn't want for nothing. I mean, anything, didn't want anything. I always had it for him. And to know that I just basically had my addiction take over and lose my kid for good. Well, before I went to RSAT, I had to go through a termination hearing. It was a 3-day process. Here, it takes 3 days. And I fought like the devil for the first 2 days. I had a different lawyer, and he's like, I mean, he was straightforward, tell you like it is. He didn't care. And he said, well, I think we've got a good case here because your judge is the family court, drug court judge. There's 3 different drug courts in Habersham County. You got drug court, which is accountability court.
Mm-hmm.
You've got mental health court, and then you've got family court for people who have open defects cases. The judge that was over my defects case was the family court judge. She ended up fixing to pull off of the case as the judge because she felt that it was a conflict of interest because at that time I had drug court officials, the DA, all of them was going to testify on my behalf to help me get my son back.
During your 3 years on the lam, is there anything you've done to get your methadone or your opioids that you regret or you think is really bad that, I mean, you don't have to share that with me if you don't want to.
No. Believe it or not, people think that there's not really a sense of community in the drug world, but we do look out for each other. You know, there's people that give a damn, and if they know you're in withdrawals and they know you're sick, you know, people will come through for you. And that's, you know, luckily I never had to do anything like that, but I know plenty of people that have. And so no, I've never had to do anything major that I regretted. The main thing that inspired me to go to the methadone clinic was stealing, pretty much stealing from a coworker, and that made me feel bad enough to, not well, that in conjunction with feeling like I was controlled. That's the thing. I'm a little bit of a rebellious spirit.
You?
Yes. And I'll be damned if anything controls me ever again, other than the universe and my creator, the good Lord, whoever. That's the only thing that has control over me. No, nothing else ever will. Yeah. I'm going to have to go get ready to go drug screen.
I didn't know the family that had him for the 2 years personally, but I did know that they were good people. I mean, I had talked to them in court.
Mhm.
They were good Christian people,
Mhm.
and they already had a college fund paid for him. So I thought, well, I thought about this and thought about this. My dad's been gone since 2002. I talked to him daily. He was my rock, my backbone. I was the baby. Wherever you see my daddy, I was considered Leroy's shadow. So I felt like he was trying to tell me something one day, and I went outside and I sat there. I'm like, Daddy, if tell me what I need to do. I fought for 2 years trying to keep my little boy. What do I need to do? I looked up and there was the biggest rainbow right in front of me, barely any clouds in the sky. And I thought, okay, what are you telling me? So I slept on it that night. I got up the next morning and started crying, and I was like, I know what I got to do. And I called my lawyer back and I said, look, I don't want to do this anymore. He said, what do you mean? And I said, I'm not going to traumatize my son like DFAC's traumatized him. He's going to therapy 1 day a month versus 3 times a week. They've got him straightened out. They're good to him. They've took him in for the last 2 years. I don't want to do this to him. I don't want to traumatize him anymore.
What year was this?
This was in 2019, January 2019.
Okay.
And no, 2018, I'm sorry. January 2018. This was before I actually got into drug. No, it wasn't either. It was 2019.
Okay.
And I sit there and I thought, okay, he's fixing to ask me the question, what happened? So he said, well, what happened? Why the change of heart? And I said, he's been traumatized so much. And I said, that's my son. He's always going to be my son. I said, he's with a good family. Why not let him be in a family? Because I'm still broke. This has given me the opportunity to fix my life, to get my life back on track, to be the mom that I want to be back to him. And he said, but that's the best thing I've ever heard you say. So we went to court, and he said, the judge asked for the lawyers to come up there, and she said, what do you need to say? And she says, we're not doing this anymore. She's terminating her rights. She's surrendering her rights. And she put her hand over my, and I could see her mouth. She said, what the hell just happened? And she put me up to the podium. She said, Miss Suttles, what happened? What happened here? And I said, I'm just not going to traumatize my kid anymore. He's been through so much. His family loves him, and they can be there for him where I can't right now. And the family, they pulled me to the side, and they said, thank you for doing this for us and for Louie. And I said, just do me one favor. And they said, what? Me and my little boy, whenever he was 2, we had this little thing together. And he would look at me and he'd say, Mama. I'd say, what, Louie? He'd go, I'd look at he'd go, catch it. I said, catch it? And he said, put it in the heart. I said, don't ever let him forget that. So they said, because I did this, and I surrendered my rights and gave them permission to adopt him, that after I finish this program, they'll set up visitation with me. They said, we're not trying to cut you out. And I said, if you'll do that for me, I'll go at my cost to the hospital. I'll take any drug test you want me to take, any hair follicle at any time. Just let me see my little boy again. And they said, okay. it's not going to be long till I see my son again. I've got, I believe what they say. And, I mean, just like I said, they're good Christian people. They're not trying to keep me from him. And my oldest boy he hasn't seen him since he was 1, because he's been in jail from the time he was barely, not even 2 yet, till he was done gone.
What's his name?
The little one?
No, Louis the little one.
Louis the little one. Jordan is the big one. Yeah.
Well, you're giving them my love.
I'll tell you, if I had to do it all over again, it would probably be the same, for the simple fact I wouldn't have Louis now if I hadn't have got involved with the first one, the man, his daddy. If I hadn't have gotten involved with him, I would never have my little boy.
Wow.
There you go. Whew. Ah.
Yeah, I gotta catch
Um.
my breath for a second, wipe the tears. I've got so many notes. Pasta, out of the fucking park. Amazing interview, so heartfelt and just honest. And oh my gosh, that was so powerful. So powerful. I relate to everything those women were saying, both of them, in so many different ways. Everything they said was on point. I have so many notes I want to go over. Audience, I know you're
Please.
crying too.
I I I didn't expect that when I did those interviews, and just the whole one of the things I want to point out, the whole Louis story obviously was so touching, and seeing that, and it came over me during the interview too. But what was even amazing too to me is when I got back to the studio, I didn't get a chance to look at all the footage from Mandy, and just those facial expressions she was making when I stepped out of the room to go get coffee, when when it wasn't like she didn't know the camera was rolling, and you just caught these real expressions of what she goes through, and you can
Right.
see the pain. And
Yeah, and that's what it is.
yeah, I'm
Pain.
just curious, please, Chanda, take it away, because I can't stop crying.
Oh, I
Please.
know, right? So, the first thing, DV, she talks about how domestic violence really went hand in hand and started her kind of down this road, and that is so true. I've been a survivor of domestic violence. I mean, I was born into it. I was raised into it. It's a chain that goes hand in hand with addiction, and it's part of that cycle. And absolutely, I related so much to that. And I've been put in the hospital. I've had terrible things happen to me at the hands of abusive men, but when I look back at it, it was always addiction that was rooted. Were we fighting over drugs, or was somebody high and somebody wasn't? There's always that dynamic when it comes to that. Let's see.
You know
Oh, the
something, Chanda, I
alcoholic,
want to
been an
ask you a question
alcoholic. I
too.
so
Yeah,
agree with that.
yeah. Chanda, before we move on, and the alcoholic things too as well, a lot of people, how they're born into that, and it's legal and whatnot, but the domestic
Right.
violence, let me digress back to that, because I have a question, because we had talked about, how people feel like this lack of self-worth. Does the domestic
Yes.
violence lead into that kind of mentality, to the point where, I mean, she was saying, like, he was gone, I got rid of him, and she almost felt like sorry and sad and alone that she did
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So I just wanted your thoughts
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, that definitely goes with low self-esteem and how you're raised. I was the only girl in a very misogynist, chauvinistic home. The 70s and 80s, it was really in your face. A woman belongs in the kitchen unless you were going to get a career, right? So I had the mindset very, very young, maybe 13, 14, that I'm not going to go to college. I'm not going to be a career woman. I'm going to marry somebody who has a good job, and I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom, because that was still an option and a mentality in the 80s.
Yeah.
And so, by early teens, I'm looking for any kind of affirmation, approval, attention from any man that'll give it to me. And yeah, definitely had daddy issues. I didn't know my real father most of my life. So I think all these pre-traumas just lead into addiction. It is the gateway to addiction, and alcoholism's one. Absolutely. You know, our society has embraced alcohol since the end of prohibition, and it's socially acceptable. You know, the elite, they drink their wine every night, right? And so you can justify it to yourself. Oh, I can
Yeah.
drink a bottle of wine, maybe 2 bottles. Hey, the rich people do it. I'm not an alcoholic, and it's a very slippery slope. And then, you know, like she said, I was an alcoholic. I drank probably every day till I met pills. And then once I met pills,
Yeah.
I didn't need alcohol anymore. Um, let's see what else notes. Smoking pills. Oh, yeah, you know, I think we try all these different ways of taking it, and what people don't understand is they're like, "Oh, what's the difference of snorting it or smoking it or just taking it?" It's how fast it penetrates the blood-brain barrier and how high you get. But the thing is you don't stay high for very long if you're doing it that way. So then you need more and you build your tolerance up really fast. So that's why people jump from I was smoking pills, I was snorting pills to I was shooting fentanyl and heroin, you know. You need that higher
Yeah. Yeah.
high.
Is that considered free basing?
Um, I think so. I don't know. I never
Yeah.
that's one of the things I never really tried too much. I knew I had such an addictive personality that I had to stay away from meth because I dabbled with meth when I was in my teen years, and I like to sleep, so it just wasn't a good thing for me. But
Yeah.
you know, you dabble. I think you know we all tried to dabble, but I learned really fast. I'm a little bit vain, and I didn't want to lose my looks. And you know, all the meth heads that were around me would lose their looks. They'd look terrible, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do
Yeah.
that. You know, so I always stayed
I
away
know
from that.
a guy from the pool hall, Chanda, that he started off and he was really, pretty much a clean kid, and eventually started smoking a little weed. And
Yeah.
I never forget the night he did his first cocoa puff. They spent a little cocaine on top of that
Yep.
marijuana, and now the kid is just like foregone addicted to every single drug
Oh,
in the
that's
book. And that's
sad.
I remember the first night he started, and I went back to Florida, and I don't even know where the kid's at. Somebody said he's gone, all from a little cocoa puff on top of a bowl and a marijuana. It was crazy.
Well, I gotta say, I'm just so proud of you for embracing and owning yours. I know the chat was a little shocked to hear your omissions. I think I was too. And, you know, no judgment here. This is what I love about our community is if we don't talk about these truths, it just stays hidden under the surface. And by us owning these things and putting them out there, you know, we're bringing them to the surface so we can talk about them. I'm so proud of you for that. What else I
Well,
got in
thank
here?
you.
Oh, pills
You
being
led the way on that. You did the
the
first big show, so
God. I know, I still feel
you were
like there's a lot of
courageous. I'm
things I'm holding
following you,
back.
Chanda.
Yeah, yeah, I'm the tip of the sword. Um, you know, the stealing, I can so relate. I am a very honest, trustworthy person. I would never steal from somebody. But when you're in the throes of addiction, you start to justify things to yourself. And you know, you gotta listen, like when she says that the drug community is very caring about each other. They are. We are. They were, you know, like I'd had 10 people on speed dial I could call and be like, oh man, I'm so sick, you know, and like, okay, come over. I got mine yesterday, you know, I'll get you well. And that's what it's about. It's about getting well. You know, she says the thought of going through withdrawal, all you can think of is how you're going to stay well and how you're going to get well.
Yeah.
And that's really so that overrides all of your, you know, things that you know are wrong. It overrides your conscience, you know. And there was plenty of times I dirty dealed people, you know, like charge them $10 for something I was only paying $5 for, so I could get myself 4 more, you know. Like
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
always
yeah.
this wheeling and dealing that goes on in the drug community. One thing I want to point out is the different names. So she says they put me on Lortab. Now, Lortab, for those on the West Coast, is Vicodin. It's the pharmaceutical name for Vicodin. The same structure, same compound. But I've noticed across the country that they put out different brands and different names to different regions. So, like when you try to run away from drugs, which I've done many times, and I once ran from Washington State all the way to West Virginia. And when I got there, of course, I was only there for 2 hours, and I managed to locate pills because I ran to the wrong state. But yeah, as I would travel and I would stop by mom's or my aunts in Utah, like, oh well, we've got narco. Well, what the hell is that? Well, that's a Vicodin too. They have different names around the regions for these same pills. I think fentanyl's got the same name everywhere though.
Chanda,
The
um,
families, yeah,
what you know, what you're talking about there too, like, I just want to, reiterate it because it really, when Mandy was telling me that stuff, like, she'd afraid it would snow. She'd afraid there'd be ice and she couldn't drive
yeah,
the car. Like the
like
fear
oh
of
my god,
fucking weather, like fearing
yeah,
weather because I can't get my fix. I was just like,
dude.
holy
I
shit,
once drove in a fucking snowstorm with like 3 feet of snow on the ground down treacherous roads to meet a nurse who was coming from the next county over from the doctor's office who was going to hand deliver my scripts so I didn't sit through the snowstorm without anything. I mean, absolutely. I completely know that feeling.
What about the thought
Um,
process of them being Mandy was 40, her first intervention with the law, and Ray Way was 42. I mean, that also
yeah,
too is like now I'm seeing these ladies. They have to call every morning at 7 o'clock to see if they got to go drug test. They got to take these courses. They got to pay these fines or whatever you call them, money
right.
to go to drug court and everything like that. And they both weren't in trouble until they were 40 and 42 and harmed nobody but themselves.
Yeah, and that's just how fast of a downward spiral that opiates create. But it also is by design because it supports the prison industrial complex. Right? We're looking at 64,000
Absolutely.
a year for one resident being housed, one prisoner being housed. Right? That's what they're charging the government in these programs. So yeah, they just thought like, okay, well, we'll give you a couple of chances in court and drug court, but if you fuck up, well, then there's another mouth that they can get money for at the state prison. And that's
Yeah.
really the mentality because of these relationships with these private prisons and big pharma. Hey, it's a win-win, right?
Yeah.
The,
Yeah.
the families helping enabling. Oh my gosh, this one. I mean, I love my family and I will do anything for them. And when I see somebody writhing in withdrawal pain of something that I understand, I know how it feels. I'm going to do anything I can to help. And, as much as I've been enabled, I've been an enabler, picking my brother up at detox and dropping him off at rehab with a handful of Valium, and just terrible shit like that. But I was doing what my brother needed me to do. He was violently ill. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't walk. When you love your family that much, you will, even if it goes against everything that you believe in, that love overpowers and you just want to help them. And I see that everywhere. I see that with moms and kids and, grandmas and grandkids. I see it all over. It's terrible,
Yeah.
but it is what it is because
Yeah.
families love each other.
Yeah.
Just criminals. Oh, becoming a criminal, and okay, that's another thing. You said these women they didn't have charges till they were in their 40s or 42s. When you go from an everyday American going to work and having a few beers and maybe smoking a little pot, you don't consider yourself a criminal, even though we've been told you're a criminal for smoking weed in this country for many years. Most of us from the 80s on have not had that mentality. But then you go to trying to secure pills and drugs and all of these all of a sudden you are a criminal and you're in this
Yeah.
criminal element and the thoughts about yourself and your self-worth just they get pounded into the ground. You are nothing. You're hiding from cops. I might get a warrant. Oh, I got to driving on a suspended. So now I'm in the system. And so you're jumping warrants and, and, you got bail bondsmen involved now and all these things that you never even knew existed. You're now dealing with
Yeah.
at a much older age than what you would. I mean, I've heard this story a lot for, women
Yeah.
my age.
Yeah. It's two things that really kind of stood out to me too as well while we're on this subject, and we talked about that, is that also the fact that Mandy's situation, she started off with her dentist giving her an opioid. And then
Yeah.
years later, a doctor prescribing for for her to go to the methadone clinic. So both of her addictions that she had to beat, that she had to go through this whole system through, were once again that doctor behind us going, here, take this. You know what I'm saying? To me, that still just drives me fucking crazy to think that methadone is the answer to an opioid. And, that's why I asked that question. Well, which is harsh? Which is more heavy on you? And she's like, well, they both
Right.
suck. They're both weighing you down. But that really, really, really just drove me crazy. And then to be honest with you, and I don't know this is just my opinion, but when I saw the police officers around the town of Cornelia, it looked like their only job, the only thing they were really doing was
It is.
looking to pull people over who were dirty. Like, that's your main
Yeah.
thing. Like, let me
Riding
find
dirty.
drug users to throw into jail, to throw into the system,
Yeah.
so we can make our money. And that's what it kind of felt like. And that's why,
Yeah.
it's so funny coming from LA, right? And I go to a Black Lives Matter protest, and they're going, oh, cops are bastards. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of
Yeah.
like this, social war we're going through. But then I go to North Georgia, and they're like, and I talk to these people, you know what I'm saying? And even this, one girl, she goes, we talked Ray after. She goes, yeah. She's like, I'm thankful now, and I see the law because I'm straight. And she goes, but there was a moment when all she wanted to do is she hated the cops. She wanted to avoid the cops.
Yep.
Mandy still kind of looks at the cops, and they're like, yeah, these guys are fucking assholes and shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, this is their job, is to
Yeah.
bust people who are addicts. So you see these like poor, white people. Like I told you that one time when I came down to Chattahoochee and I needed a ride back, and there was 3 cars there, 3 addicts. They didn't want to drive because they were so frightened of getting pulled over from the cops.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, and
So
they're
it's like
small towns.
people are
They're small
in the
towns, so
system,
they know
right?
the cop. Yeah, right. They know the
Yeah.
cop because it's a small town, Mayberry
Oh, yeah.
type of situation. That cop knows your
Oh,
car. He
yeah.
knows you don't have insurance. He knows you probably got drugs on you. And they do. I live in a rural area, and yeah, they literally feed on the poor. Like, oh, well, that'll help us meet our quota, so and so is high,
Oh, yeah.
so let's pull them over. And the
So it's the
instances
system, right?
of DUIs now. Yeah, oh, it's
Yeah.
the system. Hell yeah.
It's
Especially
people got to
like county to
understand. It's like
county,
the
but
system's attacking on everybody. It might be different in different places, and I'm not going to ever downplay, what Black people go through historically in America. It's disgusting. You know what
yeah,
I'm saying? But there are points in these pockets right here where it's a different type of kind of attack on them and whatnot. You
it
know what I'm
is.
saying? And it's just like it's part of the system. They're a dollar sign to feed the prison industrial complex, to feed the military industrial complex that will sell those weapons to those police departments that will get that money from kids, from people's misery.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And at the end of the
Right.
day, in some places, they don't give a shit if you're Black or white. They're going to go after you no matter what because you're just a dollar sign. So,
Well, how we treat addiction, it varies from class to class. So where she says that she found a 1-800 number and she called and it turned out to be a methadone clinic, I had similar experiences, 15, 20 years ago where, you would get fed up. That's it. I'm going to get some help. And there's a whole predator class of these treatment facilities around the country. And so if you are on Obamacare or you're in the state level of getting care, you get this really brutal, mean, here's methadone clinic and you need to go to it's a daily daily inpatient. But if you are an elite who lives in Newport Beach, you can go to a place like Passages, which is like a spa, where you can hang out in the hot tub and go for yoga walks and do whatever, and you come out 28 days later, you've been cured, you've accepted your addiction, and they're probably handing you a script of Big Pharma. So I mean, the end result is the same. It's just how we treat people. One's humane, one isn't.
yeah. Yeah. Wow. So true.
So true. These were amazing
Any other
interviews,
notes we
Pasta.
got?
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm trying to read all my notes. I have so many. Oh, kids. I want to talk about Louis. Was that his
Let's
name?
talk about this.
Right.
Because you're
Let's talk
experiencing
about
something
this,
like
'cause
this,
I
right?
was
With your
so-
family? Yeah.
I am. And it's hard. And I hate, putting my family out there with their problems, and I try not to do it. I might say, oh, one of my kids, I've dealt with the system in CPS, getting involved. I called them in, I'm the one who said, hey, wait a minute, these babies need protected. So ultimately, I had no choice. My hands were tied. We tried other methods. And so my grandbabies have been through hell the last 2 years being through the system. And fortunately, they weren't in a foster home, an official foster home. They stayed within the family. Um, my kids, they love each other and they take care of each other. But that freaking heartbreak of giving your kid up, like I can't even imagine. And I thank God that my situation's getting better and we're getting through it. The kids are back where they need to be, which just makes my heart sing. But seeing the system for what it was, we think that the system comes in to protect these kids, and that's the bottom line. But that's not the bottom line. There's money involved in these courts. It's who has the more powerful attorney. It's your financial standing in life. It's not just, oh, you're a drug addict. Because you'll see people that have a lot of money that can just walk right through the system. As long as you have a good attorney, you can fight back. But when you don't have a good attorney, they stomp on you.
So you're telling me that there's economics involved in this situation?
Oh, there's economics all the way around this, all the way
Yeah.
around, from drug court, from treatments to piss tests to,
Yeah.
every counselor you have to talk to, every attorney or, attorney law office that has to be involved. I mean, it's all money, money, money.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their hand out.
Remember when I asked her about the thing about like, well, did they offer rehabilitation instead of incarceration? She's like, hell no, no way. It's like
Hell
you're
no.
going to jail and that's it,
64K.
whatnot. And I just imagine if she had a lawyer and a few bucks, maybe that could have been different. But the fact
It
that
would
she
have
was
been
just
different.
poor working at the Wrigley factory,
Yeah.
no, you're going to
Yeah.
jail.
And that's exactly the bottom line, that we have two justice systems in this country, and we know it. There's the one for the elite, and then there's the rest of us, and it's not the same. That justice is not blind, and you can
Yeah.
buy your way through the system, and we've proven it time and time again.
I have a little footage too of Mandy that I also caught, like another 16-minute video of her talking about her. I think I'm going to put it up. Maybe we can put it up next week or something. But it was also talking about her time when she was on the lam for 3 years. Pretty much, she just like,
Oh,
that's it. I'm not going. Yeah, she
dude,
was on the lam and she
I've
lived
been
in
on
this
the
one
lam.
house. Yeah. So you know what it's like, right? When I hiding from the police.
Yeah,
But she lived in this
oh my
house.
God, yes.
This house is still there, and it's a house of drug addicts that help each other and do
Yeah.
whatever. And I was trying to ask her thought process and what she was doing, and her mixture of cocktails. It was like, wake up, do a little meth, and that's going too strong. Do some Valium. Later on that night, you
Yeah,
pop
come
your
down,
opioid,
go up.
the whole 9 yards. It was like, wow, wow, wow. And just hearing her talk about like, she just wanted to die. She didn't want to be a part of
Yeah.
anything. She didn't want to be, what I'm saying? She wanted no responsibilities, to the point where it was just like, I want to forget everything because life is so hell for me right now. I don't want to deal with it. Just take these pharmaceuticals and it will all go away.
And it does go away, and all you
frightening.
focus on is getting through your day. Okay, I need to get pills. Okay, I need to eat something. Okay, I feel good. I'm level. Maybe I'll call the courts and take care of this, or I'll take care of something I got to do. Because when you're so sick, you can't get out of bed and you need to find pills, you can't deal with normal day life, dentist appointment, doctor appointment, court, you can't do any of that. So a lot of your cycle of thinking is okay, I got to get well because I got to be at court at 10:30. So maybe if I call my friend, they might have something that I can get well, then I can get my ass to court before I go to jail. That you're just constantly, you're like a hamster on a wheel, constantly chasing that
That's
next
what I felt.
appointment. You
Yeah.
got to feel well. And I would have to schedule life events around when I would get my script, like my oldest daughter's graduation, like I remember I didn't have any meds for her graduation. Oh my God, how am I going to drag myself out there and be a nice, pleasant mom saying hello to everybody? And, I was so dysfunctional. And it really hurt my kids. And I'm really dealing with the repercussions of that now at my age. They were older, just at the end of high school years. And my youngest was 13. And I knew I couldn't take care of him. And his father lived down south in Louisiana. And as much as it killed me, I had to send him down there, and because I wasn't able to provide for him, I wasn't able to take care of him. I had been half-assing it. He knew it. I've been phoning it in, and so I knew in my heart of hearts the best thing to do was to send him down there so he could get to know his dad, know their family down there. And I
Yeah.
just remember the whole time he was gone for those years. He was gone for 4 years. I just felt like the biggest failure piece of shit. I couldn't take care of my own kid. I had to farm him out. Thank God the system didn't come in and take my kids. They were teenagers at that point, and they seem to not care about teens unless there's immediate, harm coming to them. But now that
Yeah.
my kids are older, they don't have the respect for me that, I was a hardworking mom. I worked my ass off up until they were 10, 11, and that's when my addiction came on. And it breaks my heart that what I did took that respect
Yeah.
from them away.
There's two things I want to point out to that those points you just made. Number one, that it's still a hamster wheel even for them in drug court, right? Like, because drug court doesn't say, well, we're going to work around your schedule. They're like, get a job that works around your drug court schedule. So
Yep.
that if there's extra work, or if a schedule's messed up, or if a job's like, well, I can't do that, then you can't get a job. So the avenue is small to, first of all, get a job. And what
Yes.
jobs can you get?
Yes.
You have to get probably the shittier jobs, right? That will just say, okay, I can work these hours. I know it's at night, no matter what. Boom, boom, boom. All right.
Yep.
And then you're still like a hamster in a wheel, because you're getting up, you're calling. Oh, I got to go drug test. After drug test, you got to go to class. Then you got to go run the work and stuff. And you know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm so fearful when I see Mandy do this stuff that, like, I'm like, man, like, you better make some stronger ass coffee, girl, because you're on the run 24/7. And the job she's got right now is so strenuous on her life right now. You know what I'm saying? That what she's doing, it's like, wow, she's got to do so much hard work, and she's got to stay in that court system. And same thing with Ray Ray and stuff, so there is
Right.
still the hamster wheel going on today, a drug court at phase 4 and at phase 5. Phase 5, she's got a Ray Ray's in phase 5. She's got a little bit more leeway. Every other day she's got to call in for a drug test, and half the time she'll go, where Mandy still has to call every day, and the classes, whatnot. But I also want to point out something about you, Ray Ray, and Mandy, because you all have children, and sometimes I think that you get the stigma that, oh, these people who are addicted are scumbags and they're just low lives and they don't really want to think about anybody
Yeah.
but themselves, and they'll just shoot up and whatnot. The choice you had to make for your 13-year-old, the choice that Mandy had to make for her son, the choice that Ray Ray made and we were able to capture in shows, just shows you that it can happen to anybody. The most loving, awesome, great people that Chris Christie
Yes.
talked about this too as well with his friend. They can be drug addicts. It's not about a person's character that makes them become a drug addict. It's about
No.
their experiences and how they deal with them. Maybe they just didn't deal with things right that allowed them to get on that or whatnot, but you can see that the system, it's a financial, economic desire from those making money to use us as pawns and rats for what they're doing. And they don't
yeah.
care about the repercussions and the hell and back that you got to go through when you get addicted to these opioids. And I think that's like one of the things that I really admire about you. And I found an admiration I already had for Mandy, but when listening to Rachel's story, the choices you made as a mother with your sons, all three of you, is why I love all three of you right now. So I want to point that out, because a lot of people, the stigma is they're scumbags and they don't care about anybody but themselves. No, they're addicted.
Yeah. No, I absolutely adore my children. I would die for them, and I know each of them would too. And the addiction becomes too powerful. It becomes the only thing you can think of. And I'm so glad that I got to say, I'm glad that drug court's there for these ladies. I am glad that they're not in prison and that they're getting to fight back.
Yeah. But still, we still got to point out that only 23% of that make it out of drug court. You know what I'm saying? So I'm talking to, and the whole thing is I was supposed to have another interview with a gentleman who is currently addicted right now, who just overdosed on heroin and got brought back. Hearing Rachel say that stuff about she died twice, almost 5 minutes,
Yeah.
with the heroin, it's so fucking crazy when you think about that. It's just wow. And
Yeah, naloxone's a
hey,
hell
listen,
of a drug.
that's the
You
tip of the
instantly
iceberg.
come back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
naloxone is what they hit you with, and literally you just pop right out of it. So one of these days I want to bring a report on that. These women, Pasta, they were so brave, and I want you to tell them I think that they're absolutely incredible and so brave. And I support them
Well, they're gonna
100%,
watch
you
this
know.
show. They're gonna watch this
Yay.
show, so I think you should take the time before we get out of here. Do you have any more questions or anything you want to talk about, or should we just end it here about 90 minutes? What do you think?
Yeah, nothing but love and gratitude for all of you in the chat who have been so supportive and telling your stories. And that's what this show is about, is to talk about these things and to be real about it, to be down to earth, not some censored puff piece about, drug addiction in America. No, this is the real face of drug addiction in America. And Pasta, I commend you. Those were hell awesome interviews. I'm excited for this show, the future of it, and what we're going to do together. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Chanda, for coming on this journey with me. Thank you, Oz, for doing so. And I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. We know a lot of people. We're so connected to our audiences that, maybe we'll get some of them to come and tell and share their stories too as well, because we got to get it out there. These are, like I said, I've known Mandy for 20 years almost,
Love her.
and there was years of times when I just didn't hear from her. Like I heard from her, then 6 years I didn't hear from her. Then I heard from her, and then 6 years I didn't hear from her. This time around, it's been different, where I heard from her, and then I heard from her after, because now she's kicking this shit right in the ass. And I'm just rooting on for her. And I just know with one success story, there's 4 others that are falling. So if we can
That's the best
provide
part.
information, if we can provide clarity, then maybe we can provide more help. Definitely more help will come with understanding. And I think that's what the show is all about, Chanda. And thank you
Yes.
so much for being my partner on this journey.
Thank you. And thank you for your compassion. And that's what it takes, guys. It takes love and compassion to conquer this.
Well, I
So
love you both,
next
and I love you
week,
all. Yeah.
I thank you so much for everything. Next week, I want to look at, since we brought it up, why don't we tackle the prison pipeline
Let's do it.
and drugs?
Let's do it.
Okay, yeah, because a
Let's
lot
do
of
it.
people who go through drug court end up failing at drug court, and then now they're in prison, and guess what they have access to? More drugs than they can get on the
Drugs.
streets. Drugs,
And their
exactly.
sentences are sometimes, in most cases, longer than they would have originally been.
Exactly.
That's a
Exactly. So
problem.
that's a good topic for next week.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. Well, you guys have been amazing chats all around. Thank you for the super rays over there on the Rockfin. We appreciate them. And keep tuning in. The show is just getting better and better. Pasta, you couldn't be a better partner. Thank you.
Love you guys.
See you next week.
Yep.